What's up, everybody, and welcome to Paratruth Reborn. My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin,
And
you'll love this episode we're about to do.
No, that was horrible. Why'd you do that?
Because you'll get a kick out of it.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I came back on the wrong day. Oh, well, if you didn't get those hints or hear or read the title of this episode, we are talking about the Yule. Now, the Yule is one of those ancient festivals where myth, nature, and human longing intertwine so beautifully that it still feels enchanted even today in the modern world. So, let's chat a little bit about the magic behind Yule. And this is something that, Justin, you and I have been studying the Yule for quite a long time now, ever since really starting these shows. And I say these shows because obviously we've had so many versions of this particular show throughout the years. But it's one of our favorite conversations and topics in general, I think, especially obviously around this time of year.
Yeah, well, and, I was looking at all of this stuff and I'm like, gosh, Christmas has intertwined so much of these not beliefs but practices that come with Yule. I was like, I was dumbfounded because there's a lot more to it than I actually realized that's been put into Christmas. And I was just talking to a friend about it and he's like, how do you guys know so much about Christmas? I'm like, I've been researching it for a really long time.
Studying Christmas.
But yeah, and so I love doing this because it has a tie to Christmas, of course. And it was interesting in our poll how many people responded, and it was majority people want to learn about the Yule gods and deities, so we'll have to do separate episode on that.
Yeah, just more focused on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Yule, it goes pretty deep and it stems into, old world culture. There's a lot of myths and legends that are kind of stored up in it as well, even more so than the modern belief system of Christmas and idea of Christmas. And honestly, Christmas today isn't quite what it was 1,000 years ago, just as then it wasn't quite as it was 3,000 years prior. Today it's very commercialized, right? So it's all about Santa Claus. It's all about red and green and Christmas decorations and selling Christmas gifts and wrapping paper and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It all kind of just is very surface level when you really consider how much history actually exists
Right.
for Christmas. And of course, you have the Christian holiday, obviously, and you have a number of other different branches in religions that kind of celebrate Christmas in different ways. But the Yule is obviously ancient. It's kind of where it all originated. And we still see a lot of the Yule now, even in modern times, though a lot of people don't recognize it as part of Yule festivals. They unknowingly participate in some of those festivities just because it's part of it's part of the whole game nowadays.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, so many holidays can be said where it's been overly commercialized. We've talked about Valentine's being that way too.
Every time I see Valentine, I want to gag. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't know why. I never have.
A holiday when you were little, like getting the little Valentines from everybody?
Well, I mean, except for when every once in a while they would miss me and I'd be the only kid in class without a sucker because I ran out. So maybe there's some hidden trauma in there somewhere. Oh, I have to talk to my therapist about it. Anyway, so let's kind of go through the Yule here for a bit, and we can chat on it. But the first thing that we're gonna kind of touch on is the fact that it's a celebration of the reborn sun. Now, long before basically electric lights, there was like this, and before the countdown of like to midnight, because the Yule extends basically 12 days and goes into the new year, of course, to it. But the Yule honored the winter solstice, which is the longest night of the year. Now, to ancient Norse, Germanic, and Celtic peoples, this wasn't just an astronomical event. It was actually a cosmic moment when the sun was basically reborn. It was rising from its weakest point to regain strength. And so the Yule heralded hope, light returning after darkness. And we've talked about so many times over the years, and even during the summers, we've talked about this, how I consider winter the dark times, right? That's what I always call it, the dark times, is because the sun doesn't, at least in most of the world, it doesn't stay up very long. Night basically rules this time of year. And so the nice thing about the winter solstice is that it's this switch. The switch is turned on where every day after the winter solstice, the sun stays awake a little longer and longer and longer, and the light basically starts to conquer the darkness, takes it back over. And so we see this celebration in Yule quite often, and it's one of the main events when it's celebrated the Yule.
Yeah, and the sun going down at 5 p.m. really sucks. So I'm sure the ancient peoples felt the same way. They didn't have the calendar and clocks that we do now, so it was probably even weirder to them, because it was, and this goes to a lot of different things. They used to blame the gods for a lot of this stuff,
right?
So as I was looking at a lot of this, it was fascinating to me that Yule has this kind of death and rebirth that we think of for winter. And a lot of people we've talked to over the years from different pagan cultures and religions, it's one of those that is very significant. And when I was kind of researching the gods, because of where the poll went, it actually goes even into Chinese and Asian culture as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it extends quite further than I ever thought. It's interesting the type of things that you learn when you actually take the time to study things.
Yeah,
I should have realized that back when I was in school. But I had an easier time.
You're just now realizing this.
Hey, better late than never, right?
Well, something that I found fascinating is that it's mentioned about fire as life magic. Bonfires, candles, hearth flames. These were not only sources of warmth in the cold, they symbolized protection from winter spirits, the endurance of life in hard times, the rising power of the sun. The most famous of this is the Yule log was sometimes burned over 12 days, which is kind of where we get the 12 days of Christmas, is from Yule and the Yule log. Each spark a blessing, each ember a wish.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I found that I wanted to include in this is the Yule log rituals. The tradition is a large log, traditionally oak, placed in the hearth and burned for 12 days, like we mentioned, from Christmas through the 12th night. The ashes were said to have protective and fertilizing properties, which I know ash has fertilizing properties, but it can also kill the soil too if you don't do it properly. Modern practice a smaller log can be decorated with herbs like cinnamon, pine, or orange, and carved with intentions or wishes before being lit. The act of watching it burn symbolizes the hopes for the new season coming true.
Yeah. Intentions and wishes are kind of those things that we have talked about a little bit. Well, we haven't gone too in depth into it, but we did do a couple of shows and we talked to a number of friends of ours on this subject matter. Because intentions and wishes are one of those things that they're we can't scientifically prove them, right? But we all have intentions. We all go about our life with intention of something, right? But in this case, we're talking about intentions of the upcoming year, what good you want to happen. Hopefully good. Hopefully you're not intending something bad because, shame on you. But, and same with wishes, wishes I think can probably also be translated to prayer in some ways. So wishes and prayers, again, is very similar to intention. And in fact, even in scripture, when we're told that when we pray, we should believe that we received what we were requesting from God already. So you're intending and believing in something that doesn't actually exist yet. And whether or not that's intention, whether or not that's wish, it's up to each individual person and their particular definition of it. But I always find those things very interesting, especially when it comes to carving that into wood. And when we've talked about intention in the past, about like writing an intention on a sheet of paper and burning it and letting the ash float away into wherever it goes, in the sky or grass. And that's yet another version of this, much smaller, more controlled version, because you're not burning an entire log, but you're burning this piece of paper. And I like to tell people, because there are certain individuals who are like, oh, you can't do that, it's witchcraft, right? And especially from the Christian culture, which understandably so, I get it. But also from people who aren't bound by any sort of religion, people who just don't simply understand. And a lot of this, you have to realize, is just symbolic too. It's like cutting the thread. When I meditate and I want to release something from myself, I will symbolically cut that thing away, or whether it's with a fake pair, a pair of scissors, or like an imaginary pair of scissors. There's nothing wrong with imagining letting go of something, or putting it out into the world, if you will. It's very important to use our imagination, whether you're doing an intention of some sort, or you're wishing, or you're praying. It's important that your imagination, works hard. And yeah, I guess I would have stopped there, but I can go on. I can just keep on rambling, man over here. That should be my theme song at this point. But another thing about the Yule log, and just also bonfires, fires in general, we have this idea of protection from winter spirits, and during Halloween we light a fire as well, a bonfire, to ward off evil spirits, or dark spirits, right? So here we see another connection with fire, and fire is often used within various cultures as a warding against dark entities or spirits, or trickster spirits. How exactly that's the case, we don't know. Obviously, we don't have any scientific evidence as to why a spirit might be afraid of fire, other than one possibility, maybe it's representative of a hellfire, right? So we, at least in the Christian culture, there is a belief that any and all evil spirits will eventually, and are already bound to hell. They may not exist right this moment, but one day they will. And so anything that represents the hellfire, the thing that's going to, keep them heated and burning and suffering, they want to refrain from. But it's also a very strong element in general within nature, right? It burns and it destroys, but at the same time, it creates life. So this is something that is very capable of creating harm, causing harm, but it's also capable of bringing forth beauty. And I think that's another thing is symbolic about fire. And it's not very easily controlled substance. I don't know if that's the right word, but element. It's not easily controlled element either. You can watch, you can put water in a cup and it'll sit there on your table and it won't move, right? You can take a thing of dirt and put it on your table and it won't move. Air, well, you can't see air, so I don't know if it's moving or not, but it might be.
I
But
mean, you
fire,
can see things moving
I
in
mean,
the wind.
you can see the yes, you can see the wind moving, right? But fire, you light a candle and you'll see it trying its hardest at times to jump away from the candle. It flickers, it flops, it jumps around. It does not want to be contained, no matter how much, or how small it is. And I think that's something that's really just symbolically kind of scary. It's something you want to refrain from. Get too close to the fire, you might get burned, right? That's a pretty typical saying.
Mhm.
So I think in many senses, there is both the physical element of fire that is protective, but there's also the symbolic aspect of it in terms of its power and ultimate kind of authority when it's released.
Oh, and in many cultures though too, they talk about the dark being afraid of the light.
Yes.
They could be talking about dark entities or something else altogether, but kind of same thing there. Not necessarily that they'll be burned, but for whatever reason, afraid of the light. I mean, maybe light burns dark entities. I don't
Well,
know.
who knows? I mean, one thing that is like a literal fact, and you can test this out yourself, right? It's you get you use a light. It could be any light, right? Whether it's the sun or a flashlight. You point it at an object and it creates a shadow, right? And as you try to move the light around to catch the shadow, that shadow always runs from it. It refuses to be caught in the light. And that's something that, it has always been like in my mind and my heart. I think about this a lot, is that the shadows always run from the light. There is no shadow that can exist within the light. It's casted by the light. It's there, but it refuses to be touched by it. Um, and I just find that really, really interesting. I remember way, way back, probably 13, 14 years ago, it was pitch black in my basement. And for an example, I was telling um, an old friend of mine about, and she's going through some tough times. And I was telling her about how she doesn't have to be afraid of the darkness because light is always going to overcome the darkness, right? And so all I did was light a little tiny lighter, it was a little itty bitty flame, and the entire basement lit up, right? Such a little flame can create so much light in an extremely dark place. And that's why we also use light to surround ourselves when we're trying to deal with dark things or we're going through a difficult time in life. We surround ourselves with light because light is that powerful. It's a protector. It pushes away the shadows and it allows guidance. I mean, you walk in the darkness, you stumble and you fall. It's just that simple. In light, you don't do that. Unless you're just clumsy, but
I mean, I am.
me too. So that might just contradict everything I just said.
So light doesn't help me. A couple other practices to go over though. You mentioned bonfires. So build a bonfire in a safe outdoor space to celebrate the longest night and the sun's return. If you're like my family, you could go streaking on New Year's Eve.
Good times.
Offerings, throw spices, wine, bread, or other offerings onto the fire as a gift to the sun to encourage its return and bring luck and prosperity. Might be where we get the leaving cookies for Santa Claus. Good practice. Colored flames. I found this fascinating. For a more advanced ritual, sprinkle specific chemicals onto the fire to create colored flames. Not the colored flames part that I found fascinating, just the fact that you can use that as part of the Yule ritual.
Yeah, it's curious though, because like there hasn't been there wasn't much research or discussion on exactly what the colored flames are for, other than they're pretty.
Right. Well, and we've talked about it, how different colors coincide with different things you're trying to wish for or manifest.
Sure.
So that's more than likely probably what it goes along with.
Yeah. I mean, that very well could be. It could be that simple. And of course, nowadays they have chemicals that are readily available specifically to change the fire various colors. And newspaper also, I don't know if you guys know, it doesn't happen very often. And I don't even know if we have newspaper around that much these days, actually, because I don't see them very often.
It's more. It might be more here compared to other places, but I mean, Shelley's got an abundance of newspaper because her mom gets the newspaper still, and our 92-year-old neighbor gets it as well.
Yeah. Well, if you've ever burned a newspaper, you've probably seen that on occasion. The ink creates a beautiful green flame. And so that was one old way that we would always try to change the color of flames. But nowadays, they actually have chemical little packets specifically for your bonfires or your fireplaces that you just throw in there, and they work decently okay. You know, they're not super, super, super prominent. But you can catch these little tiny color the flame, blue, pinks, reds, greens, and yellows and whatnot, you know. So it's pretty cool. You know, and they're cheap. They're super cheap. The next thing we want to kind of talk about is the wild hunt and holiday spirits. And this will go a little bit into the gods as well. So we won't go too deep into that on this episode, but they kind of tie in here as well. As I said earlier in the show, Yule is steeped in mythic lore. And one of the most vivid, of course, is the wild hunt. And we've talked about the wild hunt. I think we even have an episode. I don't think fully on the wild hunt, but we have an episode on a number of different myths and lore behind the Yule that include the wild hunt. But the wild hunt is basically a spectral procession led by Odin or other deities, depending on the region, on Yule nights, when the veil between worlds is thinned. Now, quick little connection here: we have a thin veil on Yule nights, but we also have a thin veil back in Samhain. Right, so we're seeing 2 times a year that we have the veil between worlds thinned. Now, during this time, a number of things happen. A, ancestors were honored. B, spirits roamed the earth more freely. And C, offerings were made to ensure protection and luck. This is the older echo, of course, behind today's magical winter nights. And again, this is very similar to what happens during Halloween as well, at least in the old days, right?
Right.
Some of us still kind of celebrate it in a similar way, but for the most part, they're pretty well connected here, which also actually kind of makes sense because we come into winter when the veil is thinned, and we leave winter with the veil being thinned. So you kind of go full circle before walking into spring. Now, there's a number of other entities or gods, even if you will, that are celebrated during this time, or at least are prominent within Yule. One is Odin, as we'd already noticed. And if anyone doesn't know who Odin is, he is a Norse allfather who leads, of course, the wild hunt, and Frey, and then the Norse god of fertility and peace. They all kind of work not simultaneously or together, but they have crossed paths time and time again. There's also the Holly King, which represents the winter aspect of the year, while deities like Saturn, Saturnalius, I think, god of agriculture, and the Germanic goddess Holda, which are also associated with winter celebration as well. Then, of course, we have some various other entities that are less god and a little more, or godlike, I should say, a little more monstrous. And of course, that is our friendly neighborhood Krampus. We all need a Krampus around. Some of us do, right? He's probably sitting in that old chair during Christmas Eve dinner, mumbling about the things that the kids are watching on TV. But then also one of my personal favorites, and we've talked about this also a lot, and that is, I believe his name or her name, I think it's a he, but I could be wrong, is Jolakator. Basically, the Yule cat, the Christmas cat, which is one of my favorite stories for Christmas of all time, just in terms of legends and lore, because this is a giant cat who basically searches around for little kids to devour who haven't received or bought themselves brand new clothes for the year to come. Um, it's kind of wild to think about, right? But it's like I've done some research on the Yule Cat over the years, and even more, even some just a couple of days ago, because again, we're talking about this particular episode. Like, well, Yule Cat time. Let's go dive in.
Yeah.
Let's see about the Yule Cat. But the Yule Cat was one of those legends that was born to help push or motivate kids to work hard, to make a savings, an allowance, so that they can save up and buy themselves new clothes. Sometimes this clothes would be gifted to them, but for the most part, it was an idea that these kids would buy the clothes themselves. And if they didn't, that means they didn't take the time to work, which means they weren't good kids, and therefore they'd be devoured by the Yule Cat. If you got a cat, you probably know what it's like to be bitten or scratched by them. You probably don't want to be eaten by a giant one.
Probably.
We're not talking about like lions and tigers. It's like this is like supposedly 4 times the size of those, at least.
Now, if I remember right, the Yule Cat is tied to the Yule lads.
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
And what was the giantess?
Was it a pet of Ogris Gryla? Yeah, I don't know how that. I can't remember how you pronounce it.
Okay.
But yeah, she was an Ogris Grilla, and her sons were the Yule lads. So the cat belonged to her. And yeah, there's a happy little family who has some interesting stories in their children, in their lore. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always loved those episodes, just especially when we first did them, went over all of those creatures or entities, whatever, because I had never heard of a lot of them that we went over.
Yeah.
Trying to think of any of the others. I know there's Frau Perkta, which had no ties to the Yule lads or anything like that. But yeah, we'll have to go over some of this in the Christmas episode. Maybe go over the Yule gods and deities more on our Christmas episode as well.
No, 100%.
Now, you can't have Yule or Christmas without the evergreen. And there is a tie to evergreen magic that goes along with Yule, which again, where we get the Christmas tree, the Yule log, holly, ivy, pine, mistletoe, all of those are evergreens and were revered as symbols of resilience and vitality. They represent eternal life, nature's promise to return, and protection against misfortune. Will you take it for a second so I can go let my dog in?
Yeah, go for it. Animals, So he said protection against misfortunes. This is one of those things that constantly, I would say constantly, but it's one of those things that are still very prominent today in modern times, right? So holly, ivy, pine, mistletoe, we use all of these on a regular basis around Christmas. And most people really don't even realize their origin story. They just think, oh, this is something that's, belongs to Christmas time. It looks pretty. It works, right? The various evergreens that we collect and that we put up and put our decorations on. These are things that really is remnant of ancient charm. And a lot of people just don't realize that, which I think is kind of crazy, because there's nothing wrong with not realizing or not knowing that belongs to an ancient practice. But there's something so much more nostalgic about it and much deeper when you realize, like, wow, thousands of years ago, this item was used, and we're putting up these Christmas trees because of this reason. It just kind of stuck. And even though the meaning has changed over the years, right, nowadays, putting up a Christmas tree, very much just about Christmas and celebrating friends and family and having a joyful time, right? At least in terms of the modern commercialized version. Some put up a Christmas tree in representation of Christ's death on the cross. They say, the scriptures say that he was nailed to a tree. So you put up the Christmas tree for the same reason. But even before that, these trees were used and these evergreens are used for a number of different reasons. And some of them is right. I can explain right now. It's simple, right? So the first is basically bringing branches and wreaths inside. Decorating homes with pine, fir, holly, and ivy is actually a tradition that directly honors the magic of evergreens. You probably never really thought of evergreens being magical, but this kind of goes and ties into the idea that there are tree spirits and elementals that work along with these trees, and you can kind of derive magic from them. There is, of course, also the Yule log, which we've talked about, which is a large log, again, burned during 12 days of Yule, which was seen as a source of protection, good fortune, and light during the longest of nights. Then, of course, there's decorating the evergreen tree. Now, this is the thing we all want to hear about because this is what we still do today. Well, here's its origin story. Maybe when you're decorating a tree, or if you're looking at it right now, you probably, unlike me, you've had your tree up already. You're probably looking at it this very moment. So now you get to learn why, right? So in ancient times, trees were decorated with offerings like fruits, nuts, and food to entice the spirits, which later evolved into modern tree decorations that represent things like prosperity, protection, and the returning sun. So all of those things that you have on your tree right now are just a transformation of what once was into what currently is. But in many ways, it's still the same, right? Because some of us have ornaments of pictures of friends, family. We have little art things that maybe your kids did, or maybe that you did when you were a kid, right? And these are all things that kind of they're decorations that kind of like show this prosperity of life, right? The richness of life and the things that you've enjoyed, and the people in your life that you celebrate. Then we have candles and lights. Now, placing lights on trees and around the home represented the sun's light, again, warding off darkness and bringing hope. Light is very powerful. It's been used for pretty much ever when it comes to pushing back the darkness. And then, of course, we have specific plants, such as the famous mistletoe, which was and still is used in traditions like kissing under it, linking it to fertility and love. And so holly was believed to protect against, completely just through me, because I didn't read this until just now, it protects against lightning strikes. I don't know what that has to do with, kissing or fertility and love, but then again,
maybe they had a lot of lightning storms in winter time.
Maybe. I mean, I will say there is something special about a lightning storm in the dead of winter, especially when it's snowing, because the lightning is usually green in the winter. At least here in Ohio, it is. If you haven't seen green lightning, it's pretty dope.
I don't know if I ever have or haven't.
One day you will. You're missing out. I really don't think you are, but it's cool. It's interesting. It's definitely different.
I mean, I've seen it flash different colors, but I don't know. I mean, maybe green. Maybe I just wasn't paying that much attention either.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the evergreen magic, pretty fascinating stuff. And again, stuff that we celebrate Christmas with today, that you would never even think about, because you're not really taught the Yule side anymore. It's just Christmas, or if you're Jewish, Hanukkah, and all of that stuff too. But the fascinating thing that I loved, just because we do this to this day, is feasting as a sacred ritual, and we've done this. By we, I mean Eric and I. Our family has always gotten together for Christmas or Thanksgiving to feast on Christmas, and it was always a huge spread. But In a season of scarcity, people gathered to share, feast, and strengthen community bonds. Food and drink were blessings exchanged, not just consumed. Yule feast reaffirmed gratitude for what survived the year, hope for the year to come, the importance of kinship. This sacred hospitality is the ancestor of today's holiday dinners.
Yeah. I mean, this goes even back to the last dinner, the last supper with the disciples and Christ, right?
Right.
Food wasn't just, unlike you and I, who probably sit in front of our TVs eating. Like, I literally just ate a bowl not long ago, a bowl of chili mac, basically 2.5 servings, and then a half a bag of donuts in front of my TV. Okay. I got my high metabolism. All right. But that is not what this is. That is not feasting as a rich sacred ritual. That is just,
that's gorging.
That's gluttony. That's sin.
Because you weren't trading it with anybody or sharing it.
Yeah, no. Binks, he was interested. I said, mm-hmm. Nope. But yeah, like, obviously sacred ritual, I think that's a word that is maybe a little too, I don't know what I'm thinking, but I think it's a little too much here, because it's the idea is really just sitting down and celebrating the holidays with friends and family and people close to you, sharing food, doing a potluck, having a meal, and conversing, having fun, right? It's the importance, like you said, of kinship and the hope for the year to come. You hope that you have your family still there the following Christmas and your friends the following Christmas. And of course, there's gratitude. I mean, how many of us get to Christmas and think like, man, I can't believe it's already been a year since last Christmas. And we think about that year. And yes, there's been a lot of hard times for most of us, but there's also been plenty of good in there somewhere, no matter how great or small. So we do look back on the year and think, oh, this happened and that happened. This is pretty cool. While also remembering and realizing, yes, this also happened and that was very hurtful. But you can also hopefully take this opportunity this Christmas to see the growth that you've made since those difficult times and what it's changed in your life. That's the best way to continue this whole idea of the sacred ritual, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think that's what Yule was kind of really about, is counting your blessings, not the torturous parts of the year, just your blessings. And I mean, Christmas should be that way, but we really get caught up in, as you've already mentioned, the commercialism of it all.
Right.
The funny thing about that is we just had Black Friday literally a couple of days ago, and Shelly and I were talking about, sales and this and that. I'm like, I will never, ever, ever, at least on Thanksgiving night, take part in a Black Friday sale ever again. I've done it 3 times in my life, and every time it's like people are almost murdering each other to get these deals.
Oh, 100%. Some people literally do murder each other for the.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's wild. You want me to take this next one?
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is the 12 Nights of Mystery and Magic. All right. That sounds all kind of cool, I guess. Yeah. It's the multi-day Yule period here. So this is also 12 nights. And again, this is where we get the whole idea of the 12 days of Christmas. But during this time, it was seen as a time outside ordinary time, a hinge in the year when magic was more potent, dreams more prophetic, and rituals more meaningful. It was basically a pause, a breath, and a cosmic reset. Now, I could try to dive into this a little deeper, but to be honest with you, that right there is the gist of it when it comes to the 12 Nights of Mystery and Magic. And so instead, what I want to do is kind of help us all understand what exactly this was, or how we can continue this kind of practice even today. There is the opportunity, and it doesn't have to be any given particular week, right? It could be any 12-day period, ideally in a row, where you take the time to sit, to pause, to breathe, to consider choices that you've made and how those choices have either been good or bad, and what choices you can make to fix or to, increase whatever good things that happen, right? Um, but it's also a time where you can meditate. You can sit and meditate. We can do 12 days of meditation, 12 days of prayer, 12 days of fasting, 12 days of just simply sitting and being, right? We're so focused on what's the next Christmas movie? Let's watch the next thing on Hallmark Channel, right?
Yeah.
I know some of y'all are watching those Hallmark movies. I'm not one of them, but
I wouldn't.
not yet. Someone might force me. I've worked on Hallmark movies, Christmas Hallmark movies, but I've yet to. No, I was going to say I've yet to watch them, but I have watched plenty.
I mean, you know me. I love the scary Christmas movies. Outside of course, A Christmas Story and Elf. We've gotten onto Elf over the past several years. But yeah, I would rather gouge my eyes out than watch a Hallmark movie.
Oh, you're so sad.
No, I just want to pause, breathe, and take in a cosmic reset. Then watch
So when it comes to doing this type of thing, when it comes to meditating, comes to pausing and breathing, when it comes to praying during, if you want to do your own little 12-day thing, right? Your own little Yule period, multi-day Yule period. Mind you, this was often like 12 nights. So this isn't literally a full day. And in modern times, it doesn't even have to be a full night, right? You can do an hour. You can do 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 15, 5, whatever you want, whatever is good for you. You can take the time to sit down, turn off the TV, turn on your Christmas lights in your home, light some candles, and just take the little bit of time to yourself to relax, right? To rest, to breathe, to release all the tension that is on us during the holiday seasons. Because I don't know about you guys, but there are a lot of gifts that I'm thinking about. And I'm like, oh, well, how's this going to hurt my wallet? That is like a literal problem for a lot of people. But it's not always about the gifts. It's not always about how much money we can spend on somebody. It's about taking the time to remember, this is a cliche, but the reason for the season. It's the truth, though. I mean, it's a good time to remember that you're alive and that we are here together working through it. And there's a lot to really honor, I think, in this time. And it's not, not just Jesus, and it's not just your friends and family. It's the things about yourself that we maybe don't always consistently think about. We're pulled in so many directions throughout life that I think a lot of us give up on certain things about ourselves. And I'm very much one of those people. I tend to forget to take care of myself first while I'm, stumbling over a number of different anxiety thoughts or intrusive thoughts and whatnot. So it's important. If you guys don't do this, I think you should. I think it'd be very helpful. And if you do, have a little 12-night mystery and magic time to yourself. That sounded really, really kind of dirty. Erase that. Erase what I just said.
Can't. It's out in the ether now.
That was so bad. Like I said, intrusive thoughts. I've got a lot of intrusive thoughts. Point made. Anyway, if you guys do decide to have like a little multi-day Yule period, you should let us know either what you're doing when you're doing it, and maybe we can even do a little thing together as like a little group. I think that'd be kind of cool if we can all have like, I don't know, 15-minute period in which we all meditate on ourselves and just on life, right? And then we can chat about it. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And whether it's just getting into a chat, or like we've got the Facebook group now, and just do a small live session and do that, that'd be kind of cool.
Super cool.
We got this comment that says, if you can find it, someone use shaving cream or something for snow in a Hallmark Christmas movie.
I believe it.
All right. So what is the heart of Yule? At its core, Yule is about light returning after darkness, community warming against winter, nature's quiet power, reverence for ancestors and unseen forces, which can be said about a lot of different practices. The resilience of life. It's a celebration that whispers. Even in the deepest dark, light is preparing to rise again. And that is probably the most powerful phrase I've ever heard, because all of us get into these deep, dark parts of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And many of us end up losing our lives because of that, because they can't see the light. So one thing that I really want to press this year on our holiday episodes is, if you are depressed during this time of year, know that there is a place to reach out. I believe the suicide hotline is 988. You can reach out to us here at Paratruth if you have something going through your head, or you need uplifting. We will absolutely talk to you. Just make sure that you're reaching out and not letting those inner demons win.
Right. And I'll add to that. If you are going through a dark time, this phrase is, it, like you just said, is very powerful, right? I want to say it again. Even in the deepest dark, light is preparing to rise again. But there is something else. There's always a whisper of light, even in the darkest of night, right? You look up and you see the stars. There's light shining. You look up, you see the moon. It's a reflection of that sun that is soon to rise again. So even when you're going through a dark time, take the opportunity to seek out those little lights that do exist in your life, because I guarantee they're there, but the darkness is overpowering it. It's trying to keep it at bay, subside it, push it away from you. Don't allow it. You're going through a dark time. Look for those little lights that are whispering, saying, hey, I'm here. And it's only a matter of time before he rises again, right? So really, final thoughts, Justin. What are you thinking, man? Like, how do you, I mean, we've studied this a lot over the years, the Yule. And I mean, honestly, this is one of those topics that never gets old to me. I always enjoy going back into it and reading some of these, especially some of the legends and the lore, which I know we're going to get into later this month as well. But what do you think stands out the most to you in terms of the celebration of Yule?
Just the celebration that, although that we are in a dark time of the year, I should say dark time of the year, not in dark times.
I mean, we're in dark times, dude.
I mean,
at least in America, right?
But just like Yule, the light will come and bring life and vitality back. Mm-hmm. And eventually the same will come to the current situation. But I've always loved that expression or mentality, that you don't have to get down. It's just a part. It's the cycle of life, really.
Yeah.
And just seeing a lot of the practices that we celebrate today, which I already knew, of course, but just to see it in black and white, and to understand that a lot of this came from times well before Christ and Christmas and the celebration that we do today.
Mm-hmm.
Your final thoughts?
I think it's just very interesting how much of the Yule is kind of a repetition of Samhain in a way. There's a lot of cross links between the two. And I think it's really cool that we begin the season with a thin veil and we ended the season on a thin veil. It's like it separates winter. It makes winter its own special and unique season because of that. Because we have spring, summer, and fall, 3 seasons together. And then all of a sudden there's winter separated by the thinning of a veil. And I just find that really intriguing. Now, winter is definitely one of those times of year where I always tend to pause and reflect. I have a love-hate relationship with winter, to be honest. I hate being out in the winter, right? In the cold, freezing, whatever. But when I'm inside, I have a cup of coffee, I'm reading a book, and it's snowing outside. Like there is very little things that I find more desirable and pleasant than that. Like it's just relaxing. It just helps to relieve some of the stress. And it's a reminder that in the quietest of times, and I do think winter is one of the the quietest season, like both literal and figurative, in the sense that a lot of the animals, they're hibernating or they've gone south, right? But also the snow, it literally is a what do you call it? Like the snow like mute sound. I can't think of the name of. There's a name for it.
Oh, I have no idea.
It's the same thing you put up. Well, it's the same thing that like you would put up for absorption, sound absorption. Snow, natural sound absorber. And so when you step outside in snow, everything is extra silent. Every little honk of the horns and every car that does by, all the birds, they don't echo like they normally would. It just gets zapped, right? Pulled right into the snow. And there's something so peaceful about it. And I find that so intriguing. And how the Yule kind of celebrates these type of things. It's again the moment to rest and reflect and to really consider this idea of a cosmic reset. It's like, okay, at the end of the winter, once Christmas rolls through, once New Year's rolls through, boom, we're onto a new year. It starts all over, the reset, right? And I think it's important to take winter, Yule, and use that to your advantage. You can call it a New Year's resolution. I don't necessarily like to use that word because I think resolutions are given up really quick. But you can definitely make some changes and look forward to some pretty cool times in the year to come, right? But yeah, I think that's just the most interesting thing about the Yule. It's just this celebration is something that's so, honestly, winter, in my opinion, is one of the most poetic seasons of all. Like in and of itself, it's a poet. But the way everything moves, the way the season changes, the way we see death and life at the same time is pretty wild.
That's pretty deep.
Bro, I'm feeling deep tonight. I don't know. I just speak what comes in my mind, and sometimes it's good.
Sometimes it's really bad.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, same. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. We hope that you will like, share, subscribe, no matter where you listen. Make sure you check out next week where we will be having on Patty Negree to talk about our book Dollcraft. I thought it was rather appropriate to have that on, seeing as we are getting close to the Christmas season where everybody's going to be getting dolls. But until next week, where you'll find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin.
And I'm Eric. Peace.